So this sweet looking pastor killed his own wife, and his name is Tim. Now Tim, he's been a pastor for 10 years in Florida and all the way to Minnesota, but he's always gotten fired from his position, and it always involved money or women, which isn't a good look for a pastor. But everyone saw him as charismatic and a gift from God. Because of all his lifelong crimes, he had to move from state to state to have a fresh start. But he kept getting into business with women, and his wife Janice, she had enough. Because this time, Tim was serving time in jail for forcing the lady of the night to play with his thing. And he had to serve 6 months in jail. So Janice, she takes their 2 daughters and moves in with her sister. And she gets a job, and she's so over Tim. Until Tim gets released from prison early, and he surprises Janice. And he's like, honey, forgive me, and he vows to never cheat on her again. So Janice forgives him because she thinks staying together will be better for the kids. Well, so she thought. So one day, Tim comes up with an idea to run a turkey shoot to raise some money for charity. And during this turkey shoot, one of the shotguns just jams. So some guy just turns around and says, I'll get it fixed. But Tim's like, no, I'll take it to my house to keep them safe. So he takes them home and asks his wife Janice to help him. She's walking ahead of him into the house, and that's when Tim's gun hits the door frame and the trigger goes off and shoots Janice in the back 3 feet away from her. And everyone's screaming in the house, and Tim's panicking. He tells the kids to call 911. And Janice, she's bleeding to death, and she tells Tim how much she loves him and the 2 girls. Then Janice just dies. Tim's sobbing, claiming to the cops that it was an accident, and they believe him because he's the holy pastor. Until the cops run his name through the system, and that's when they found out that Tim legally changed his name twice only a few days before Janice dies. So this seems a little bit suspicious to the cops. And Janice's family, they knew Janice's death was no accident, so they tell the cops to investigate. Meanwhile, Tim leaves his daughters behind and goes to Washington. Why? Well, it turns out he had a mistress, and her name was Molly, and Molly lived in Washington. And Tim and Molly, they were actually engaged only a month before Janice died. But Molly had no idea that Tim was married or that he was even a pastor, because he told Molly that his name was McNally and that he was a lieutenant commander in the Navy. He even dressed as a lieutenant to impress Molly. But the cops still didn't have enough evidence against him until 6 months later. The cops discovered that Tim had gotten a loan under Janet's name after her death. And that's when, boom, the cops arrest Tim. But Tim, he was really nice and admits he forged Janet's loan because they had no money. Blah, 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 poor guy. But the detectives aren't buying his BS, so they start questioning him about Janice's death. And Tim gets mad, and he starts changing his story a lot, and ends up confessing that he was engaged to Molly a month before her death. And that's when the cops get enough evidence to prosecute Tim for Janice's murder. And finally, he was charged for murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Not once did he apologize to his daughters. He didn't even look them in the face when he was sentenced. What an ass. And this is what Tim looks like in real life. And this is Janice. May she rest in peace. Hi guys, if you made it all the way to the end of the video, make sure you give it a thumbs up and subscribe. Also, please make sure to head over to my Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. See you in the next video. Bye! Bye!
يلا مع السلامة.